imagine a man who basically spent his entire life perfecting this ritual of absolute peace.
Right, just total mindfulness.
Yeah, mindfulness, rustic simplicity, quiet contemplation. Got that image in your head?
I do.
Okay, so now imagine that exact same guy at the age of 70 ending his own life, and I mean violently, by disemboweling himself with a dagger.
It is, I mean, it's brutal.
It is. And he didn't do it out of despair or, like, depression. He did it because he was directly ordered to by his closest ally.
Wow.
An ally who just so happened to be the most powerful, ruthless warlord in all of Japan.
It's honestly one of the most jarring historical contradictions you'll ever come across.
Right.
You have this serene, perfectly quiet tea room on one hand, and then, well, the incredibly bloody reality of ritual suicide on the other.
Yeah, so to figure out how Senno Riki ended up holding that dagger, we have to look at the sources you brought for us today. Because, look, this isn't just a biography of a tea master. Our mission for this deep dive is to uncover how a merchant's son essentially weaponized the concept of simplicity.
He really did.
He used it to conquer the most dangerous men in 16th century Japan. We're looking at how Riki became the absolute authority on the Japanese tea ceremony, which is called chenyu, and how he defined the wabi-sabi aesthetic.
Which is an aesthetic that still dictates so much of global design today, you know?
Exactly. But to really grasp his leverage, we have to look past the tea leaves, right?
Right. This is, it's really a masterclass in how aesthetics become this tool of immense empire-shaping political power.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how the deliberate pacing of pouring water or like the rough texture of a clay bowl can literally bring a dictator to his knees.
Okay, let's unpack this class dynamic first, because his rise completely subverts the rigid social hierarchy of the time.
Oh, entirely.
Right, so coming from the wealthy merchant hub of Sakai, Riki wasn't born into the samurai class. And he definitely wasn't royalty.
No, not at all.
He was born in 1522. His childhood name was Yoshiro, and his dad, Tanaka Yohei, was just a warehouse owner.
Right.
So how does a warehouse owner's son bypass the samurai class entirely and eventually end up advising the Emperor of Japan?
Well, he does it by capitalizing on the unique independence of his hometown, for one, and by radically synthesizing two completely different worlds.
Okay, tell me about his hometown.
So Sakai, which is in modern-day Osaka Prefecture, was this bustling, semi-autonomous merchant town.
Right.
It was wealthy, practical, heavily involved in trade. And as a young man, Riki studied tea under a townman named Kinamuki Duching.
Okay.
And then at 19, he starts studying under Takenojo. Now, Juche was already beginning to experiment with the wabi aesthetic.
Which is that focus on the simple, right?
Exactly, the unpretentious, moving away from those flashy displays of wealth that were popular.
But Riki takes that aesthetic preference and he anchors it in something much heavier.
He does.
Because he undergoes strict Zen training at Daitokuji Temple in Kyoto. And that's where he gets the Buddhist name Tsuchiki.
Right, and the specific type of Buddhism really matters here. It's Rinzai Zen.
Okay, how is that different?
Well, Rinzai Zen is not about just sitting peacefully and zoning out. It's intensely rigorous. It's a highly disciplined practice focused on sudden enlightenment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it uses koans, which are these paradoxical riddles, to aggressively break down your logical, intellectual mind.
To force you into a state of direct reality.
Exactly, unmediated reality. So Riki took the grounded, everyday practicality of his merchant background, and he fused it with the psychological stripping down of Rinzai Zen.
So he basically transforms the tea ceremony from this polite upper-class beverage service into a profound spiritual crucible.
Yes. Every single movement becomes deliberate.
Washing a bowl or scooping matcha isn't just prep work anymore.
No, it's the meditation itself. It forces everyone in the room into the immediate present.
He emphasized directness, rustic simplicity, and absolute honesty of self.
He essentially turned the tea room into a mirror.
Which makes his choice of patrons deeply fascinating to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the era he lived in, the Sengoku and Azuchi Momoyama periods, was defined by endless, brutal civil war.
Yeah, it was incredibly violent.
The warlords were actively trying to conquer and unify a fractured Japan by any means necessary. Yet, it's these bloodthirsty unifiers who become utterly obsessed with Riki's quiet, disciplined tea practice.
Well, you have to look at the psychology of a conquering warlord, right?
Okay.
You can subjugate a province with swords and firearms, sure. But military might alone doesn't give you legitimacy.
Right, if you just kill everyone, you're just a tyrant.
Exactly, you're just a brute. To prove you have the divine or cultural right to rule over a unified Japan, you have to demonstrate mastery over the highest cultural arts.
That makes total sense.
So in 1579, at the age of 58, Rikyū becomes a tea master for Oda Nobunaga.
Who is like one of the most fearsome military leaders in Japanese history.
The most ruthless.
And then, after Nobunaga is assassinated in 1582, Rikyū seamlessly transitions to serving his successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
Right. And Hideyoshi is the man who finally unifies the country.
And he brings Rikyū right into his inner circle of confidants.
Because under Hideyoshi, tea becomes the ultimate political currency.
Wow.
A tea ceremony wasn't a break from political maneuvering. It was the battlefield, just scaled down to a tiny room.
Let's unpack the mechanism of that, actually.
Yeah.
How exactly does a tea ceremony function as a political tool?
Well, think about the environment of feudal Japan. Trust is practically non-existent.
Paranoia is basically a survival skill.
Exactly. Betrayal is constant. So the tea room was one of the only physical spaces where these heavily armed, paranoid warlords could meet without their armies.
Right, because you can't bring your retainers inside.
No, it was this intimate, highly choreographed environment. Dominance could be subtly asserted through the mastery of etiquette or the display of a priceless utensil.
Or even just the deliberate seating arrangement.
Yes. And Sen no Rikyū was the unquestioned architect and gatekeeper of that entire space.
He controlled the environment where the real power brokering happened.
He did.
And Hideyoshi needed Rikyū's cultural legitimacy so desperately that he actually manipulated the imperial court for him.
This is one of my favorite details from the sources.
It's so crazy. In 1585, Hideyoshi wants to host this massive tea gathering for Emperor Ikemachi at the imperial palace.
But there's a bureaucratic problem.
Right. Rikyū is a commoner by birth. He doesn't have the aristocratic credentials to even cross the threshold of the palace.
So Hideyoshi's solution shows you exactly who held the real leverage.
He has the emperor himself bestow a title on Rikyū.
Yes. He gets the emperor to give him the Buddhist lay name and title Rikikuji.
The emperor grants a prestigious title, simply so Hideyoshi's favorite tea guy has the VIP clearance to get through the door.
It's a brilliant transactional relationship, really.
Hideyoshi gets the ultimate blessing of the emperor, essentially rubber stamping his rule.
And Rikyū gets absolute, institutionalized cultural authority.
Which he then uses in Hideyoshi's Grand Kitano tea ceremony in 1587, right?
Yeah, which was this massive, ostentatious public display of the warlord's wealth.
But, and here's the brilliant contradiction in Rikyū's life, he helps Hideyoshi project this massive golden power to the masses. But at the exact same time, he completely flips the ruling class's definition of luxury upside down.
He totally subverts it.
Up until this point, the wealthy elites showed off their status by collecting karamono, right?
Right. Those expensive imported Chinese ceramics.
They were perfectly symmetrical, flawless, and astronomically expensive.
It was a very straightforward equation for them. I have more money than you, therefore I can buy a more flawless bowl, therefore I am superior to you.
And Rikyū just rejects that entire equation.
Completely. He begins championing wamono, which are native Japanese wares.
He collaborates with the local tile maker, right? Raku Chujiro.
Yes, to create raku-ware tea bowls. And these are not perfectly smooth.
They aren't symmetrical at all.
No, they are hand-shaped, rough, and wildly uneven.
So why does a rough clay bowl hold more psychological power than a flawless imported one?
Because a flawless Chinese bowl allows you to stay in your intellectual, calculating mind. You look at it and you just admire its monetary value.
Oh, I see.
But a rough, asymmetrical raku bowl forces you into the tactile, immediate presence.
You have to feel its weight.
Exactly. You notice how it fits perfectly into your hands despite its imperfections. It forces mindfulness.
So Rikyū wasn't the first to conceptualize wabi-sabi, this appreciation of the simple and imperfect, but he institutionalized it.
He really did. He developed wabi-cha, a style of tea that forced people to focus on the spiritual weight of the moment rather than, the price tag of the equipment.
And he didn't just change the bowls. He radically redesigned the physical architecture of the ceremony itself.
The rooms themselves changed.
He starts building suyan, or grass hermitage tea rooms, like the Taian room, which is still standing today at the Mushkian Temple in Kyoto.
It's a designated national treasure now.
And it is exactly 2 tatami mats in size.
It is tiny.
It's barely larger than a modern walk-in closet. And it has mud walls.
It is the ultimate leveling mechanism.
It's as if today's tech billionaires suddenly decided that, super yachts were embarrassing, and the only way to prove you were truly elite was to sit in a barren mud hut, drinking from a cup you shaped out of dirt yourself.
That's a great way to put it. But here's the crucial catch. Rikyū was the one guarding the door to that mud hut.
Right. He controlled the guest list to the ultimate status symbol of the era.
He controlled the physical entry, too. When you approach a rustic tea room, like the Taien, you encounter this specific architectural feature Rikyū utilized, called the Nijiraguchi.
The crawling-in entrance.
Yes. It is purposely built so small and so low to the ground that it is physically impossible for a samurai to enter while wearing his longswords.
Which begs the question, why would a paranoid, violent dictator agree to leave his sword outside and crawl on his knees into a tiny room?
Because Rikyū had made wabi-cha the absolute pinnacle of cultural sophistication.
Ah, so if Hideyoshi refused to crawl through that door, he wouldn't look powerful.
Exactly. He would look uncultured. He'd look like a brute who didn't understand the highest spiritual art of the land.
So Rikyū basically weaponized peer pressure and aesthetic philosophy at the highest level of government.
He forced the most dangerous men in Japan to strip away their armor, leave their weapons in the dirt, bow their heads, and crawl into a space where the normal rules of feudal power were completely suspended.
He forced them to face themselves.
Yes.
There's this quote from Rikyū from the sources that perfectly captures the underlying threat of his philosophy to these men. He said, "Though you wipe your hands and brush off the dust and dirt from the vessels, what is the use of all this fuss if the heart is still impure?"
That is such a direct philosophical challenge to the superficiality of military power.
It really is.
He's telling the rulers of Japan that their conquests mean absolutely nothing if their internal state is chaotic.
But, when you force absolute autocrats to face their own internal chaos, and you routinely strip them of their symbols of power, things don't stay peaceful forever.
No, they don't.
This unyielding commitment to his spiritual vision put Rikyū on a fatal collision course with Hideyoshi. In 1591, Hideyoshi orders Rikyū to commit ritual suicide.
And the historical texts often cite crucial differences of opinion. And note that Rikyū was simply too independent.
Wait, differences of opinion? That is a massive political euphemism.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't order your most powerful, globally recognized cultural advisor to disembowel himself over a disagreement about tea bowl aesthetics.
No, you definitely don't.
What was the actual underlying political threat that Rikyū posed to Hideyoshi?
The threat was untouchable authority. Hideyoshi demanded absolute, unquestioning submission from everyone in his orbit. He was an autocrat attempting to solidify control over a fractured nation.
Right.
But Rikyū operated from a center of spiritual and cultural authority that Hideyoshi's swords couldn't touch.
He had his own massive network of powerful samurai disciples.
Exactly. He was effectively a competing power center. He could legitimize or delegitimize a lord's standing with a single invitation or a single refusal to a tea ceremony.
And the tension had been violently escalating. Right?
Yeah, just 1 year prior, in 1590, Hideyoshi had Rikyū's famous disciple, a townsman named Yamanui Soji, brutally tortured and decapitated.
Oh, man. So Rikyū is acutely aware of the danger. He knows Hideyoshi's patience for any form of independence is gone.
He knows Hideyoshi likely wanted Rikyū to yield, to apologize, to publicly submit.
But Rikyū, grounded in the uncompromising reality of Rinzai Zen, refused to compromise his principles for a political ruler.
He wouldn't bend.
Which brings us to the 28th day of the second month in 1591, at Rikyū's residence within Hideyoshi's own Jurikudai Palace in Kyoto.
He's 70 years old.
70. And he receives the official order to commit seppuku. And his response is it's a masterpiece of psychological dominance.
It really is. According to Okakura Kakuzu's famous work, The Book of Tea, Rikyū invites his closest guests for one final, exquisitely composed tea ceremony.
He serves them perfectly.
Yes. He presents the tea equipage for their inspection, alongside a hanging scroll that speaks to the fleeting nature of all things.
And then he gives each guest a piece of the equipment as a final memento.
But he keeps the main tea bowl for himself.
And he shatters it.
He destroys his own bowl and states, "Never again shall this cup, polluted by the lips of misfortune, be used by man."
It is a breathtaking rebuke.
He is essentially declaring that the political machine that has condemned him is a misfortune. It's a taint on the purity of his practice.
By destroying the vessel, he ensures his integrity cannot be co-opted or outlived by the very system executing it.
Exactly.
After the guests depart, save for one witness, Rikyū prepares for the end. He writes a death poem, addressing the verses directly to the dagger he's about to use.
The poem reads, "In a life of 70 years, after exerting myself to the limit, now with my own sacred sword, I kill both patriarchs and the Buddha."
I mean, wow.
And that final line, "I kill both patriarchs and the Buddha," is not literal violence against religion. It's actually a famous koan from Rinji Ixuan, the founder of the Rinzai school.
Okay, what does it mean?
The teaching is, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. It means you must destroy all external authorities, all idols, all illusions of hierarchy.
So enlightenment and truth can't be given to you by a monk, a patriarch, or a warlord.
Exactly. In his final breath, Rikyū is asserting absolute spiritual independence. He answers to no one, and certainly not to Hideyoshi.
And then he finishes the poem, "Carrying in my hands the only weapon I own, this one long sword, and at this moment, alas, I abandon it to the heavens."
It's incredibly powerful.
The sheer theatricality, the profound dignity of that moment, it's staggering. He essentially wins the psychological war at the exact moment he loses his life.
He really does. And the sources show that Hideyoshi couldn't escape the weight of what he had done.
Right. The following year, while building a lavish new residence, Hideyoshi reportedly remarked that he wished its construction would be pleasing to Rikyū.
Expressing deep regret for the execution.
Hideyoshi realized too late that he had severed the very root of the cultural legitimacy he spent his life trying to cultivate.
And Hideyoshi's political dynasty collapsed shortly after his death. But Rikyū's legacy, that proved indestructible.
His teachings actually survived the chaos.
They did. His bloodline and his precise aesthetic philosophies were preserved.
Which is amazing.
Today, there are 3 imoto, or head houses, of the Japanese tea ceremony directly descended from him.
The sansenke.
Yes. The omotesenke, the urasenke, and the mushachisenke.
So they are still the gatekeepers of this practice centuries later.
Very much so. They rigorously pass down his exact teachings. The omotesenke and urasenke schools hold major annual memorials at their headquarters every March.
Wow.
Furthermore, all 3 families take turns holding a service on the 28th of every month at Jukin, which is the sub-temple at Daitokuji where Rikyū is buried.
So his spiritual DNA is still the absolute unshakable foundation of the art.
Unquestionably.
It really reframes everything we think we know about influence, doesn't it? We set out on this deep dive to explore how one man defined a minimalist aesthetic, but what we actually uncovered is a masterclass in the mechanics of power.
Yeah, Rikyū proved that true authority doesn't always come from hoarding material wealth or, wielding military might.
Sometimes true power is forcing the loudest, most dangerous people in the room to sit in silence, face their own imperfections, and realize that their gold can't buy them a pure heart.
We are just so conditioned to associate leverage with aggression or massive untouchable fortunes.
Right.
And Rikyū subverted all of that. He proved that you can literally bend the will of an empire from a tiny, mud-walled room armed with nothing but absolute conviction and a simple clay teacup.
That is such a stunning thought to carry with us. So as we wrap up our analysis of these sources, I want to leave you with one final thing to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
It's a good one.
The next time you're drinking your morning coffee or your afternoon tea, take a long, close look at your favorite mug. Really look at the weight of it, the shape of it. If you had to host your greatest enemy or your biggest hero today, what single, simple object in your house would you use to show them who you truly are?